Welcome to For the Record. I'm Michelle Wright. Today I sit down one-on-one with a local Pulitzer Prize winner. Dr. Etta Fields Black is an historian and a professor at Carnegie Mellon University and the author of this book, Combahee, Harriet Tubman, the Combahee River Raid and Black Freedom During the Civil War, which has earned her that Pulitzer. Let's go to my conversation with her now. I'm so excited to introduce you to Dr. Etta Fields Black, a Carnegie Mellon University history professor. The reason we invited her here is she just won a Pulitzer Prize for her book. Congratulations. The book is called Combahee, Harriet Tubman, the Combahee River Raid and Black Freedom During the Civil War.
Thank you.
Wonderful. When you started this project, did you have any idea that you would win a Pulitzer Prize?
When I started it, no, but around 2020, when I signed my advance contract in February 2020, my editor, another book that he edited and a book about slavery won the Pulitzer in history. So that's when I began to dream and think that maybe it was possible that I could win it too.
It's very significant.
Thank you.
I want to ask you this too before we get into the book. How did you hear that you were the winner?
Well, my team at Oxford University Press and I and my agent came up, we curated a list of about 35 awards. So the press submitted everything. I knew that I was the nominee from Oxford for the Pulitzer, and I knew that since last summer. But I told everyone, I don't want to hear anything about these awards. And I have to stop. I gave myself a moratorium. I couldn't Google, I couldn't look up anything, right? Who's the winner, when it will be announced, nothing. So I got a cryptic email from my editor on Monday morning. And I remembered calling my mother and saying, I don't know what's going on with him. He says that no matter what happens today, he's enjoyed working with me. He would do it all again. He just went on and on, but he said, no matter what happens today. I said to my mom, I don't know what's going on today. She said, well, today they're announcing the Pulitzer. And I was like, what?
Then the
So my mother's
on.
been keeping up with when things are announced, unbeknownst to me. And I was like, well, what time, Mom? I was in Monterey, California. I had just done 3 Combahee events. And I was scheduled to fly out at the time, right about the time that it would have been announced. So she said she would listen for me. My flight ended up being delayed, and so I was able to watch it from the very crowded airport in Monterey, California on my phone.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
This is fascinating. It focuses a lot on the American hero, Harriet Tubman. Mm-hmm. We know her so much from her work with the Underground Railroad, but you're focusing on the book in something else that happened in South Carolina along the Combahee River, the raids there. More than 700 enslaved people were freed because of her. She led this raid as a woman, leading men to do this. It's really amazing, and a lot of people are saying this was a big turning point in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So Harriet Tubman comes down in May of 1862, and she came down, the arrangements were made by the governor of Massachusetts, John Andrew. This was after a big battle, the Battle of Port Royal, November 1861. The U.S. Navy drove its armada up Port Royal Sound, took out 2 forts, and the U.S. Army occupied Beaufort, the Sea Islands, and Port Royal, South Carolina. 8,000 enslaved people were no longer in bondage, and the U.S. Army decreed them contrabands of war, so they would not be returned to the Confederate planters who legally owned them. They weren't free until July of 1862, but this is still 5 months before the Emancipation Proclamation goes into effect. This was a humanitarian crisis, right? 8,000 people who needed food shelter, medical care, employment. They needed to earn a living, and the Union saw that they could, rather than allow the Confederate slaveholders to exploit their labor, the Union could use their labor for the war effort. So Tubman comes down in the context of abolitionists who volunteered to help the freed people. But she comes down as a spy and as a scout. She recruited, trained, and led a group of 8 or 9 men who were her scouts and pilots. And these men piloted Colonel James Montgomery, who's the commander of the raid, in the 2nd South Carolina, 300 black soldiers, the 3rd Rhode Island Heavy Artillery, 1 battery of white soldiers up the Combahee River.
And they're all listening to Harriet Tubman, this woman.
Yes.
That had to be rare.
It had never happened before, right. And it really hasn't happened since.
Just an amazing figure. And she was a spy, and that had to be another rarity for a woman in the 1860s.
Yes, it was. She was not alone. There were black women and white women who were spies. There were many black men who gave intelligence to the Union military. We don't know many of their names, right? They were listed in the official military record by first names, and usually by the name of the planter that held them in bondage. So we went to this plantation, we encountered this enslaved man who was owned by this person, and he showed us XYZ, right? But you don't find women in the official military record, black women, who are named as spies or scouts. So there are a lot of stories still that we don't know, and Tubman's story opens that window.
And coming up on For the Record, the inspiration Dr. Etta Fields Black found while researching deep into the past. Welcome back to For the Record. I want to get back to my conversation with Dr. Etta Fields Black about her Pulitzer Prize-winning book and how researching part of legendary abolitionist and social activist Harriet Tubman's life led to even more discoveries. I could talk to you about Harriet Tubman all day long because she really is an inspiration and fascinating in so many ways. In your book, though, we should also mention one thing that you did that was spectacular is go into the pension records for the enslaved people who were set free. Why did you take the time to do that? Why is that so important?
So Minas Hamilton is the leading man of Combahee. He told his life story to one of the Union commanders. He was 88 years old. He was born enslaved by Old Master Lowndes, and he told what happened to he and his wife on the morning of the raid, how the enslaved people were in the rice fields hoeing rice at 8 a.m., and what happened when the U.S. Army boats came up the river. What he regretted he couldn't go back to get from the slave cabins. How they ran to the river, you know, two very elderly people, and how he felt, first of all, seeing young black men in Union uniform for the first time, and then how he felt watching everything that the man who owned him in bondage go up in flames. And Mr. Hamilton tells us he really didn't care at all. He was in awe of the black soldiers, complete awe. And he didn't care at all that the plantation was burning. He and his wife were going to the boat and going to freedom.
They knew that they were
going to freedom, yes. So when I found Minas Hamilton's story, I wanted to find more. And I thought that this would be a story that had not been told, to identify the people who were liberated in the raid and to tell the story of the raid through their perspective and in their own words.
And that hadn't been done before because it was very difficult to get all of that information, and that's something amazing that you did, looking at their pension records. A lot of them were illiterate at the time, applying for a pension. How did you sort all of that out when they were trying to list their story for qualifying for a pension?
Yeah. So these were illiterate people and they were born enslaved, so they didn't have birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, or even birth certificates for their children. But what they had was each other. And so the veterans and the widows and the neighbors showed up for each other, and they verified each other's identities and the legality of their marriages and the legitimacy of their children, and told the stories of their lives in relationship to each other. So the first thing I had to do is to transcribe the pension files, which ranged from 30 to sometimes 300 pages of cursive. And I decided early on to do full text transcriptions of these files, each and every file. And I ended up transcribing over 200. And I started doing this first by myself, and then thanks to Carnegie Mellon, I was able to hire research assistants to do the transcriptions. And then I databased them. So I have a very large, it's like 40-column database with questions that developed from reading the pension files. And I did this myself, manually cut and pasted information from the transcriptions into this massive database. And the goal was to make them keyword searchable, because there are so many details in the pension files that I wanted to be able to go back and access them easily. So to have to go back and say, okay, what was the name of the pastor that married this couple? Have I seen that name before? And go back and read 50 files. There is no way, it's just untenable. So it was a lot of work. It was an enormous amount of work to do the full text transcriptions, but it made accessing the data in the files so much easier and possible.
Why do you think it's so important to have that database?
Because it has been impossible for historians to identify enslaved people on plantations and to connect people who are written about in planter sources and they're only given first names, to connect those people who then appear in the 1870 census, which is the first federal document in which formerly enslaved people have first and last names, and then to connect those people to their descendants today. So the pension files I found in Combie, in researching Combie, are the link. They are the link because people testify about their names. They testify about the names that they had in the slave quarters before the war. And people changed their names, like Harriet Tubman. People changed, enslaved people and formerly enslaved changed their names over time, and pretty frequently, actually. They also allow us to hear from the enslaved people where they were held in bondage and by whom, and then how they're bought and sold and mortgaged and passed down within families and sometimes given away as gifts. So the other thing I do in Combie is to document those transactions, and to document them in a way that shows us that we can document enslaved people. We can identify them on the plantations. And what this does is it opens the door for millions of African Americans who are the descendants of slaves and who are the descendants of U.S. colored troop soldiers to potentially identify their enslaved ancestors.
That's just such an amazing project. And I know some of that is personal for you because you had a relative there in the rice fields in South Carolina.
Yes, my dad was the last of his siblings born in Green Pond, South Carolina, which is a mile or two from where the raid took place. And I as I was working on Combee, before I knew Combee was going to be the book that it is, I was working on the Fields family genealogy and looking for our Fields family ancestor, Hector Fields, and was able, through the pension files, to find that Hector actually fought in the Combee raid. He escaped in the Battle of Port Royal. He joined the 2nd South Carolina Volunteers in March of 1863, fought in the raid, and from not so much his pension file, there's very little information in Hector's file. Hector did not get a pension, but his brother Jonas did. We learned so much about the family history, and what I learned about my own family in this one pension file. Number one, it helped me identify the 2 companies of the 2nd South Carolina that were formed by the Combee men the morning after the raid when they enlisted in the 2nd South Carolina. It also helped me identify the main characters who remembered the raid and who testified about it in their pension files. And it gave me the idea that I could reconstruct the Combee community before, during, and after the raid and tell their stories in bondage and in freedom.
And 2 minutes away on For the Record, the lessons Dr. Etta Fields Black says we can all learn from the life of Harriet Tubman. Welcome back to For the Record. Getting back now to my interview with Pulitzer Prize-winning author Dr. Etta Fields Black, I ask about what we can all take away from her book, Combee, Harriet Tubman, The Combee River Raid and Black Freedom During the Civil War. What lessons do you think we can learn from Harriet Tubman?
You know, selflessness, I think, is number one. Harriet Tubman went back 13 times on the Maryland Eastern Shore, back to the neighborhood and in some cases the plantation from which she escaped. And she brought about 70 people out of bondage. I liken it to putting your hand in an alligator's mouth 13 times and bringing it out safely.
Because she escaped safely on her own. She went up
Correct.
through Pennsylvania on the other side of our state here.
Correct.
And then she was brave enough to go back.
To go back.
To get other people.
And to risk her own freedom and possibly risk her life. Certainly when she goes down to South Carolina, she's risking her life. Had she been caught, she would have been sold back into slavery and certainly sold, you know, outside of the Maryland Eastern Shore into the Deep South. Which for someone who was formerly enslaved and then became free, that's a fate worse than death, right? To be re-enslaved. She risked all of that. She could have been relatively comfortable in Philadelphia or in Cape May or St. Catharines, Ontario, or Auburn, New York. These are all places where she made her home after she liberates herself. She could have stayed there. And I think, you know, what can we learn? A lot of people would have stayed there. So we can learn that freedom is not free until we're all free. And in order for all of us to be free, risks have to be taken, you know, and people have to be willing to put it all on the line, like Harriet Tubman. To fight for this nation, to fight for the freedom of other people, and to sacrifice our own comfort.
Coming up.
On the road to this project, I became a storyteller.
A final thought from Dr. Etta Fields Black about her Pulitzer Prize-winning book. Welcome back to For the Record. For my final thought with Dr. Etta Fields Black, I ask how the research she did for her Pulitzer Prize-winning book changed her personally. Listen to what she had to say. Did this project change you personally in any way?
Yes. On the road to this project, I became a storyteller. And that's not something, believe it or not, that academic historians are trained to do. But I developed a passion for making history accessible and making it something that connects with your average reader. Not only writing for other academics and for graduate students, but writing for the general public. So I really have developed this passion and this desire to take history out. I've called it in the past, take it off the shelf and put it on stage. Well, now I'm taking it off the shelf and putting it in the streets and giving people heroes, if you will. You know, not only Harriet Tubman, whose name we knew, and now we know a totally different part of Tubman's life and of her experiences, but what about the nameless, faceless, I call them heretofore storyless people we didn't know, right? That they are heroes too. And they also risk their lives to liberate themselves and then for the freedom of other people.
Why is it so important that we remember history?
I think that we have to know who we are. And I think that history is a very important element of that. We need to know who we are as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a nation. You know, my mother and my mother's family would say we need to know from whence we came. And if we know what we've been through, then I think we also have inspiration for what we're going through now and what we will go through in the future. We know that we have survived and that we have the tools and we have the strength and we have the support to continue in that struggle.
And Dr. Etta Fields Black says she'll receive her Pulitzer Prize on October 30th. That's all for today's edition of For the Record. Have a good week.